Oh, man. Oh my god. How do we even begin? Well, I guess we can start by saying how I came to even watch this film. Many of you viewing already know that the birth of this Nightmind channel began with my Marble Hornets Explained series, going through the entire order of events, puzzles, videos, and everything else to solve its mysteries and secrets to the fullest extent that I was able. For about 3 to 4 full months, I lived, breathed, and analyzed Marble Hornets non-stop, going over the entire span of the series about 4 times. Once for a full marathon of initial viewing, once more for taking notes alongside the videos, a third round for connecting the dots and compiling information, clues, and facts, and a fourth time as I wrote the script for each episode. I know Marble Hornets more than anyone outside of its own creators ever should. I couldn't go for weeks at a time without thinking of the operator symbol or turning over mysteries I hadn't yet pierced in my head. So, ever since completing that Explained series, I've been asked by plenty of viewers to review Always Watching, a Marble Hornets story. The issue with doing that lies in the title alone. See, if you view Always Watching, you don't end up looking at a Marble Hornets story. This movie has absolutely nothing to do with Marble Hornets except for a look-alike villain and an Easter egg in the dialogue of a videotape at the very end of the film. To be completely honest, it has about as much to do with Marble Hornets as beehives have to do with the making of Cheerios. Sure, way down the line there are some bees who make some honey and 50 crucial steps later you get Cheerios. But don't try to package it as the story of some valiant bees bringing breakfast cereal to hungry children. I've heard of movie adaptations that have been disowned by their creators, and while the team behind Marble Hornets haven't really spoken about their thoughts on the film, I feel as if it deserves that kind of treatment, because it completely defies so much of what they created with the series and ultimately uses the name of what they made as a cheap lure for viewers. And beyond being a false adaptation, it's just not a very good movie. How do we even begin to approach this? Well, let's talk about the movie aspects first. Let's go ahead and just do that first, I guess. The film is supposedly found footage. It's all stuff caught on camera, all the time from the hands of a main character. Except that the filmmakers broke their own rule about the premise 16 minutes into the movie. Here, let's take a look at this image. This camera is from the inside of a news station. It's a security camera. In this very quick scene, we see 2 of the main characters walk in and walk down the hall. First, I can tell you from a filmmaking perspective that this kind of setup didn't even need to happen. Before these 2 characters came inside, the guy in the blue shirt named Milo, which might actually be a Tribe 12 reference, has his camera running in his bag. We know this because we just watched him enter the building from the perspective of the camera in the bag. After going past the security camera, we get another perspective shot from the camera inside the bag as the characters enter a video lab. When you are making a found footage film, sudden jump cuts to about 15 seconds down the timeline or so actually add authenticity. All they had to do was cut from the moment entering the building to this point, or just afterward when the camera is placed down on the table. While looking at this security camera shot, I felt a dire need to see some kind of reason for it appear later in the film or at the very end, like some employee of the news station pulled all of the footage they could get of the group after the incident and were seeing it alongside them. Not only did that not happen, which means there is no story reason for the security camera footage, but thinking about it now, there would also be no reason for an extra detective character at the end to include it either. The security camera angle has no purpose. It doesn't need to be here, and by pure logic and common sense, none of these characters would get a hold of that footage or have a real reason to do so. This may not look like a big issue, but it's a symptom of a much larger problem that hurts the film entirely. The creators didn't know how to construct their own found footage narrative properly. We open with footage that has 2 kids running through the woods from Slenderman. I refuse to insult the guys who made Marble Hornets by calling him the operator in this movie because it's not the operator. Those 2 kids run into Slenderman, they get scared, one of them gets possessed, and then murders the other. This is a story issue regarding the operator, so I know it's a premature point, but I needed to bring it up to address the movie issue. This footage never makes its way across the laps of any of our main characters. It's there to set the tone with no rhyme or reason. There isn't a single ounce of story connection between the starting footage and the main story, and the movie ends in exactly the same way too. A videotape that is only loosely connected to the film's main plot, presented with no connective tissue or context. The entire idea of a found footage movie is that it consists of footage found by someone who puts it together in a fully cohesive, linear context, even if that requires, say, white text on black background title cards in between videos. Oh wait, where have I seen that technique used before? Right, in Marble Hornets, which was supposed to lay the groundwork for this movie. And did the filmmakers learn from that technique? Nope. Here, let's just stick this completely unrelated footage of two teenagers playing Slender the Eight Pages in real life. We don't actually have to explain how it's a part of the movie. It's found footage, right? It works! Except that nobody in the story actually finds it. So no, it's not found footage. It also doesn't help that the found footage feeling is missing from so much of the film. Granted, that's going to happen with a movie based on a small local news crew taking on the investigation because they have better cameras, but that brings us right back to square one. Why is this happening in a movie based on Marble Hornets? These actors are all people in their very late 20s to mid-30s working for local news. Why would you take the core audience of Marble Hornets, who are teenagers to college-age students just like Jay, Tim, and Alex, and then present a group of unrelatable 30-year-olds to them? Why would you alienate the only age group who is likely to buy tickets to see this film at a theater release and actually support your movie? Why would you give us intelligent, capable adults with capable equipment and resources in a horror movie, who get things all too easily and don't hit that many walls in their progress? Major note for all of you aspiring writers. The more outgunned and undereducated your protagonist is in going up against evil, the more entertaining your movie is likely to be. And on top of that, let's add another major note. Take that unprepared, inexperienced character and keep torturing them with conflict. Hit them with overwhelming setbacks little by little. Increase the tension. Keep raising the stakes higher and higher and breaking their psyches. Because let me tell ya, it doesn't happen in Always Watching. They try to make it happen and I can see where they went for it, but at each turn, I found myself completely unable to care. These characters are people you just don't care about. You don't like them, and that's a very, very bad move in a horror film. From the start, you know that Sarah, the reporter, is kind of pushy, the main character Milo is actually stalking her and filming it, and the last member of their trio, whatever his name was, it doesn't matter, you won't care about him, is hot-tempered and arrogant. And all of them have the experience, resources, and contacts of 30-something-year-old local news professionals working on a case. These are not the kind of people that make for a good horror movie. And these especially are not the kind of people that viewers of Marble Hornets, the very people who will carry word of mouth for this film and get their peers to see this kind of movie, are going to give a damn about and relate to. And speaking of that whole the main character was stalking the female character thing, let's discuss the plot, because that subplot reminds me that there's some kind of story here. First, I'd like to establish that the entire subplot of the love triangle between the three main characters is entirely unnecessary. It's bad, it's awkward, it feels gross to be spending the movie with the character of Milo to begin with, and it just gets annoying whenever more of this terrible subplot comes up. As for the main plot, the crew are part of local news. They're trying to do a story about foreclosed homes. They come across these tapes in a foreclosed home that looks like the family just got up and ran, and then whoop-de-doo, Slenderman's in the tapes. You know how it is. From there, Milo gets infected with the Slenderman's presence by watching the tapes and also picks up a really nice operator symbol branding. Yes, as part of the canon story of Always Watching, the Slenderman now sneaks up on you in your sleep with a tiny blowtorch and burns a sexy operator symbol right into your skin. For free. We'll talk about why this is ridiculous in a minute. So then Milo infects the others with Slenderman's personal branding. They all pile in a van and go to Colorado. Yes, Colorado, not Alabama where Marble Hornets actually took place, to find the family who ran from their home. Why'd they run from their home? Slenderman was there, so they packed up and drove away. Didn't help them though, because Slenderman followed them, and then the father went into a trance under Slenderman's influence and murdered his daughter and then attempted to kill his wife. Yes, in a movie based on Marble Hornets, where the operator does not force people to kill other people, the Slenderman now actually kills people through his victims instead of the infected attacking because of a psychotic fit. Then the wife burns the house down, she gets put in an asylum, the news team meets her there, blah blah blah, they all die at the end, who cares? And then we get an ending tape of the family dad telling his wife that he just bought the camera that he's filming with from some college kid. There was a tape inside with some kind of student art film on it that he's taping over, and yes, that alone is supposed to be the tie-down to Marble Hornets. The infected family, which led to the local news crew story, picked up the Slender Man disease because they got some of the original Marble Hornets footage in a garage sale and taped over them. That's it. Oh, and there's a cute Easter egg of Alex Crayley being missing at a gas station in Alabama, which they're only driving through on the way to Colorado. Because why put the movie where Marble Hornets took place? Right? That would make sense, so they can't do it. You know what the real tragedy of this movie is? How I've got so much to say about how and why it was terrible, but because it was terrible, I don't even want to spend the effort describing it. I think we're hitting Christmas Horror Story levels of stupid, you guys. Anyway, back to movie failures. The movie doesn't understand fear. It barely understands suspense. It doesn't understand that Slender Man is not something to be waved around every 10 minutes and that he should be hidden and teased for a while until suddenly smacking the viewer in the face. When he appears in little moments of build-up throughout, he also shouldn't be so completely obvious to see. And like I said earlier with the movie mistakes, they really crash and burn on the found footage test. The characters are unlikable and unrelatable, it's not very scary or suspenseful, the subplot was garbage and didn't compel me to know more or see what happens next, the horror movie laws were largely ignored, and the entire film does not live up to the premise of its title. This is not a Marble Hornets story. This barely has anything to do with Marble Hornets. It is an insult to Marble Hornets and what it is. So talking about insults, let's get back to that whole operator symbol being burned into the skin thing. When the operator symbol first appeared, it showed up as a symptom of Alex Crayley's illness. It was his personal expression for the Slender Man, a circle with an X through it, meaning no face. Where a face should be, it had been crossed out. The film treats the operator symbol like a no-holds-barred symptom of the illness itself and a serial killer's unique signature. Alex was the only one who drew the operator symbol. Jay didn't do it. Tim didn't do it. Our third infected character, who I'm not going to name, didn't do it. If they had, if the operator symbol was meant to be the operator's very own signature, then every infected character in the story would draw it. They would feel compelled to draw it. And even more importantly, if those he followed had an operator symbol burned into their skin, Jay absolutely would have had one. And he would have shown us the very first day it appeared. Jay showed us everything. Tim would have had one too, and we would have seen it when he finally came around to sharing information with Jay. The operator symbol is not Slender Man's personal serial killer signature. It's an expression Alex came up with alone. If it was anything more, we would have seen it in Marble Hornets. And now that we're on the subject of the operator and the idea of serial killers, let's get something straight. The villain in Always Watching is not the operator. It's not him, it just looks like him. In Always Watching, the monster is a serial killer who marks his victims, stalks them, and taunts them by not only burning the operator symbol into their skin, but drawing it on surfaces himself. Do you see this operator symbol? That was left in the condensation of the car window while the group slept in it overnight on the way to Colorado. They noticed it in the morning after finding the cameraman's dog dead with an operator symbol burned into his skin. So, the Slender Man in Always Watching dropped by, killed the dog because he could, and then drew on the window with his freakishly long white finger? Why? Because the movie took the symbol and said this is now his personal expression for himself because he's a serial killer. Genius! Except that it's not. It's really not. You're wrong. It's not genius. It's not even smart. And then later, we of course see the family dad from the tapes kill his daughter, which is so far away from Marble Hornets lore and Slender Man lore that it's utterly ridiculous. And then he tries to kill his wife. And each of these people have their own operator symbol branding, which means that all three of them were marked as victims. Even if this branding idea had been part of Marble Hornets, it would mean that the operator marked you as his property and would want you to stay alive. It doesn't want its victims harmed. We've seen that it doesn't want its victims harmed because it needs them to spread the disease. This concept that the Slender Man marks the victim with an operator symbol and then uses another marked victim to kill the others is so ridiculous I can't fathom what they were thinking. This is so far off from the entire Marble Hornets lore that, again, adding the Marble Hornets name to the film is an insult to Marble Hornets. There's also the additional canon of the movie that dictates how you can only see Slender Man through a camera, which, again, is completely the opposite of what we saw in Marble Hornets. You don't need a camera to see the operator. Alex sees him early on during the filming of his Marble Hornets student film project, and we also see Tim stand up to the operator much later in Season 3 in full view of a camera lying on the ground many yards behind him. The operator also barely moves in Marble Hornets, but in Always Watching, Slender Man moves his arms, moves his head, zooms across fields of grass, and shows up way more often than he ever should. The true horror of Marble Hornets was the suspense that came from going too long without seeing Slender Man, because you knew, sooner or later, you were going to run into him at the height of your fear. You don't have to even worry about it with Always Watching because they just throw Slender Man all over the place like some kind of trophy. Hey everybody, you want a Slender Man? How about you? You want some Slender Man? Come get some Slender Man. You'll catch him every 10 minutes. I counted only 2 unique shots of him that I thought were cool. All other times, he was overexposed or showing up way too often. This movie is not a Marble Hornet story. It really, seriously isn't. It's a Slender Man ripoff film with Easter eggs alluding to Marble Hornets, a series that actually understood what it was doing. It pretends it's using the operator but then breaks the rules and adds new rules while still saying, "This is in the Marble Hornets universe, really?" If they wanted to actually stay in the Marble Hornets lore, all they had to do was ask Troy or Joseph to write them a universe Bible. Just a set of rules on a piece of paper, honestly. I'm not even convinced the people who made the film watched the series in its entirety. If they did, they weren't paying attention. It's not a Marble Hornet story. Don't buy it for a second. This is a movie using Marble Hornets as a branding to sell itself and delivers only on Easter eggs and misappropriated story elements. I can't even give this thing a rating with my usual criteria. It fails as a found footage movie, it's pretty boring and uninspired as a movie, and it's about as faithful an adaptation as The Last Airbender was for Avatar. If the Five Nights at Freddy's movie comes out pulling even half of this shit, the fans will make sure that rivers run red with blood of producers. Do not see Always Watching unless it shows up on Netflix. Just don't do it. It's not the kind of quality content that earns the Marble Hornets name. It's a shame to see they did this to the operator and everything Troy, Tim, and Joseph built. Let's just go back to the original YouTube channel and cheer on Clear Lakes 44 as it develops. Any direction it goes in now is going to be better than Always Watching. I'm out of here. I need to forget about this lie of a movie. Good night, sleep tight, don't let any terrible adaptations with a plan to scam bite.